On June 8th, 1989, someone found a body in the yard of an abandoned house in a quiet Canadian suburb. It was 44-year-old Cindy James. Her hands and feet were tied behind her back in a complicated series of knots, and a black nylon stocking was wrapped around her neck. Anyone looking at that scene would call it murder. But when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police showed up, they didn't launch a manhunt. They concluded that Cindy James had done this to herself, and that ruling shocked her family and outraged her friends. Here's what makes the case hard to explain away. For 7 years before her death, Cindy reported almost 100 separate incidents of harassment, stalking, and violent attacks. She was found drugged, beaten, and stabbed through the hand with a knife. The police believed she staged every one of them. So which is it? Did an invisible attacker commit the perfect crime? Or was Cindy going through a psychological collapse severe enough that she orchestrated her own torment for 7 years? Go back to late 1982, and Cindy was a nurse in Vancouver, well-liked by her co-workers, warm and capable by every account. She'd just separated from her husband, a doctor named Roy Makepeace. 4 months later, the calls started. They were anonymous and they were strange. Cindy's mother remembered that the voice on the line kept changing. Sometimes a harsh whisper, sometimes just silence on the other end. She went to the police and the harassment escalated instead of stopping. Over the following months, it turned physical. Prowlers outside her window at night, porch lights smashed, phone lines cut from outside the house, threatening notes on her doorstep. Her friend Agnes Woodcock remembered Cindy telling her the man didn't want to kill her. He wanted to scare her to death. Then the line between psychological terror and physical violence disappeared. Agnes went to check on Cindy one evening, got no answer at the door, and walked around back. She found Cindy crouched in the dark, with a nylon stocking tied so tight around her neck, she was turning blue. Cindy said she'd been grabbed from behind in the garage, and only remembered a pair of white sneakers before losing consciousness. By this point, the local police were skeptical, and Cindy knew it. She changed her last name, repainted her car, moved to a new house, and hired a private investigator named Ozzie Caban. None of it stopped the attacks. Caban figured out fast that this wasn't a normal stalking case. Cindy was terrified, but also cagey with investigators, withholding details, backing off questions. He noted she didn't act like a typical victim. Her family had an explanation. They said the stalker had held a knife to her throat and told her that if she talked to police, he'd go after her sister and mother next. Then came the night that almost killed her. Caban had given her a two-way radio in case of emergency. One night a garbled sound came through it. He drove over, broke a window, and kicked the door in. Cindy was on the floor, barely conscious, a paring knife driven through her hand, pinning a note to her skin. At the hospital, she said a man had come into the yard, hit her with a piece of wood, held her down, and injected her with something. By now, Vancouver police had committed serious resources to the case, an estimated $1.5 million, and they put her under round-the-clock surveillance, with as many as 14 officers watching the house at once. And this is the detail that turned the investigation on its head. Nothing happened while the surveillance was up. The neighborhood went quiet. The day police pulled the detail, the attacks started again. That pattern is what pushed investigators toward a different theory. Maybe the attacker wasn't hiding in the shadows at all. Maybe it was Cindy. More than 100 incidents in, the inconsistencies piled up. Her basement caught fire one night, and she woke her house guests to get them out. But investigators found the fire had started from inside the house. and the window she said the intruder used was still covered in undisturbed dust and her own fingerprints. She'd also gone out alone to walk her dog at 3 a.m., right before the fire broke out. Another time she turned up 6 miles from home, dazed in a ditch, hypothermic, tied up, wearing a man's work boot and glove. Nobody saw her leave, and there were no tire tracks or signs of a struggle anywhere near where she was found. Across 7 years and hundreds of police call-outs, with tracking dogs and hidden cameras involved, investigators never found a stranger's fingerprint or spotted a suspicious figure near her. Cindy was deteriorating, and her own doctors eventually had her committed to a psychiatric ward, worried she was suicidal. Some believed she had a rare dissociative disorder, essentially living out a second identity without conscious awareness of it. Her therapist said later that not being believed was what was breaking her. She was released after 10 weeks. Her father said she seemed changed, and for the first time she told him she knew who was behind it all. "If the police can't solve this," she said, "I'll solve it for them." She never got the chance. On May 25th, 1989, Cindy James disappeared. Her car turned up abandoned in a parking lot with groceries and a wrapped birthday gift still inside, blood on the driver's door, and her wallet's contents scattered underneath the vehicle. 2 weeks later, they found her body in that abandoned yard, hog-tied and strangled. The autopsy found a lethal dose of morphine and flurazepam in her system. Police closed it as suicide, arguing she'd injected herself and tied her own hands and feet before losing consciousness. Her family and several forensic experts pushed back hard. A lethal morphine dose works fast enough that injecting yourself, hiding the syringe, which was never found, and tying complex knots behind your own back in the couple of minutes you'd have, seems close to physically impossible. The disagreement was serious enough that the coroner's inquest wouldn't rule it a suicide. Instead, they landed on something almost unheard of. Unknown event. Not suicide, not homicide, not accident. People who've studied the case are still split. Some think a disturbed person, maybe her ex-husband or someone with medical training who knew how to dodge surveillance, tortured her for years and staged her death to look like a hoax. Others think Cindy was fighting her own mind, and this was the tragic end of a 7-year cry for help that nobody heard the way she needed them to. 100 attacks, $1 million investigation, no answer that satisfies anyone. What do you think happened to Cindy James?